Happy enough. No. Not just yet. I don't see her there now. So no other apologies. Happy enough. Okay. Item 2 was to sign the minutes and the confidential minutes of the previous meeting held in July, and we've done that already there just. And item 3 is to take any declarations of interest. No declarations of interest, and we've nothing on WebEx. So, okay, that takes us into the meeting proper. So 4 is to consider the report on consultations. That's paper A. I'm going to ask our director, Jill, just to take us through this particular piece here. Sorry, Jill. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's quite a substantial report on consultations that we have this evening, I suppose reflective of the summer period. So if we're happy enough, I'd just like to take you through it in a bit of detail. So the first 3 consultations, we're looking to seek approval from members to submit during September. So the first is a draft consultation on free period products. The Council will be, the response is very supportive of this consultation. It extends existing arrangements to go beyond provision for those in financial difficulty. In our consultation response, we outline the current provision within the Council. We refer to other models that we've identified as good practice, and we seek clarification on funding for additional funding required for this. So a fairly straightforward response. The second consultation is on changes and, in fact, reductions to the discretionary support scheme, the Department for Communities. It's a quality impact assessment. This is a very important scheme, discretionary support scheme for those in need. It provides financial support for those in extreme, an exceptional or crisis situation for those on very low incomes. And the support is in the form of grants, emergency grants or interest-free loans for things like short-term living expenses, things like to buy food, the very basic essentials, household items, fridges, cookers, and to cover rental costs. So the proposal is to reduce, based on central government budgetary challenges, this discretionary support that's available. The response, we've made a response, a robust response, where we've highlighted, firstly, that the restrictions have come into play in conjunction, in tandem with this equality impact assessment. So we flagged that there hasn't been proper and full consultation on this. Also, the consultation, there is really a lack of clarity in terms of what exactly is being proposed. It's just fairly general in terms of that there will be a reduction. And there's a particular lack of clarity as to identify how high priority cases will be determined within this discretionary support fund and the proposed reductions. So that is the response that we have there. And then the third consultation that the response we're seeking approval from members for is the strategic framework to end violence against women and girls. So this is a very significant new initiative being taken forward by the Executive Office. They have a very wide vision articulated within the strategic framework that women and girls are free from all forms of gender bias, harm, abuse and violence, including attitudes, systems and structural inequalities. So really, it's a very important and I think a modern initiative to support gender inequality and to try and bring around culture change in society around this issue through changed attitudes, behaviours and social norms. So officers have again provided a very strong and robust response, highlighting in particular the additional challenges faced by women and girls in a rural region. And how that plays out. The importance of education, particularly at an early age for young people, and in particular around social media usage, which is occurring challenging. And the response that officers have prepared is very supportive of those who have lived experience of gender violence, gender inequality, and who are supported locally by our community and voluntary sector very well. So those are the 3 consultations that we're seeking approval for, if we have any.
you, Jill, for that. Any comments or questions from the floor? And if there's not, I'll maybe seek to move to the recommendations. If we can get, just in terms of recommendations there, you'll see them listed, members. Maybe if we take them maybe just individually. Jill, is that the best? Maybe 9.1, you see the 3 strands there. Can I get a proposer and seconder for that, please? Councillor Roof and Councillor McPhillips. 9.2, that the council notes the additional information presented, and then it gives the list of other reports there or consultations. Councillor Coyle.
Yeah, can I just ask, in relation to the consultation regarding the domestic violence, we did have I think workplaces need a workplace policy, domestic violence workplace policy, and I know that this council should have one, and you know, hopefully we had one a few years back before many other councils and other places of work, and I know there's one in the trust, but I think that's a really important aspect to promote within the workplace, because that provides that allows the employers to provide safety mechanisms for anybody experiencing domestic violence, male or female, and I think that's an important part of you know, moving forward, that employers are encouraged to have these policies in place, and that the workforce know about them. You know, that they're not just put on a shelf and left there. So I can't see it included in there, but if it could be included in that response, please.
Yeah, and the proposer's happy enough for that addition.
Yeah.
Councillor Reid and Councillor McPhillips. Okay. Councillor Deehan on WebEx.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I want to thank Jill for her report, and just to say emphasize how important these consultation responses are. I do want to support Councillor Debbie Coyle in her comments, but broadly just to welcome these initiatives. And I think that as a council, it is imperative that we as a public body should continue to reinforce our position that any violence against women and girls is totally unacceptable. And I think that Jill has provided a very comprehensive consultation report, so I welcome that. Chair, I just wanted to say that I'm joining the meeting on WebEx, but as host, it's just a blank screen. I'm not seeing a view of the chamber. Is that correct? I could click out and click in again. Normally, I would see a view of the council chamber. I don't know if that can be corrected or not, but thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deehan. I see Donald's here with us, so he's heard them comments, so he'll advise that hopefully, Councillor Deehan. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so we've got a proposer and seconder for the first part of the recommendations. If we just take a proposer and seconder then to note the remainders, please. Sorry, Councillor Green, you wanted to come in here, is right?
Well, maybe you give me a wee bit of latitude when that's done. I just wanted to come in
100%.
in relation to a consultation.
Okay, so proposer and seconder, please, for 9. So we're looking just for clarity. So it's 9.2.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. Councillor Coyle and Councillor Brown. All agreed? Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Seamus.
Yeah, it's in relation to last week's call for evidence from the ammonia protocol that's gone through. It's largely to do affect farm, or well, obviously farming, but planning and that. There's a few added questions I would like that to be asked, either if it could be included in consultation, or if not, that it could be asked independently to the organisation that's running this. And as some of the questions are, I just have written down here, a request details of the data sources and a breakdown of the databases used in presenting information in the call for evidence. I think it's vital that we know actually where the sources are for these. I have asked this myself about a month ago from NIEA from the guy that's run this. I was promised that it would be sent, all of this, and it still hasn't. It was to be sent within days. It must be near months now. Also to seek clarification on whether any final revised protocol based on the call for evidence will be formally consulted upon and will be subjected to an equality impact screening and assessment. And I believe that is absolutely vital, because I believe that it won't stack up in an equality impact assessment. Also, given the cross-cutting nature of the proposals and impact, seek information of any future strategy or operational framework will require executive rather than ministerial approval. So is this a cross-cutting thing that's gone through? So if it is, it would need an executive decision on it. And also maybe to seek confirmation on the next steps in the process and the allocated timescale in which continuing absence of the executive. What if any decisions can be taken? So with no executive, is gridlock from here to an executive comes at some stage in the future. Also on that, I just was looking through some statistics, and it's actually quite frightening. And I don't think we had it in the consultation, but DAERA's Agricultural Statistical Review 2022 states that in June 22 there were 26,089 farms, of which 20,500 are classified as very small. The report mentions that these farms, so 20,500 farms, contribute only 20% of the industrial total standard output. So the small farms are, and almost all the farms, so 20,000 farms are basically only putting out 20%. So it's the big intensified farms that's the problem. But on the call to evidence, if I have read it right, it'll be the small farms that'll be put out of business, because a lot of them are geographically linked or near to the designated areas. So I think the one size fits all that they have in this protocol doesn't work. So if them things could be either added or independently sent and asked for comments and replies from that, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Seamus. Councillor Green, happy enough for that then. So can I get a second for that proposal, please, from Councillor Green? Councillor Coyle, and we're all agreed. Okay, members, that takes us on to 4.2, and that's our financial matters report, paper B, and Catherine's going to take us through that. Right, Catherine?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this report has two different sections. The first section there is for approval of the management accounts for the period to July, so that's from April to July 2023, and an associated Treasury Management and Potential Indicator outturn report for the quarter ended June. Hopefully next time around those will coincide the quarter reporting timeframe. It also includes, for noting members, an update from Land and Property Services into the rates of what's termed as the actual penny product for the quarter one, and an update from the Department for Communities in relation to the de-rating grant. So members, just in summary for the management accounts, which are attached at Appendix 1, detailed by service area. The budget for this financial year, members, is £44,806,789. For the 4-month period ended 31st of July, members, the net expenditure, so that is the cost less any income generated from service areas in that period, amounts to £12,460,286 out of a profile budget for the period of £12,837,163. The Treasury Management Report, which is quite technical in nature, is detailed at Appendix 2, and just to highlight for members, there are no issues of concern in relation to quarter one, having gone through the Treasury which includes investment, borrowings, capital financing requirements, and projections of spend and capital activity for the first couple of months. So that's a positive report. In terms of the actual penny product members for 23-24, the current position, or the position at the 30th of June, was a rates finalisation of £412,000, predominantly due to the timing of properties brought into the valuation list and those properties actually being billed for value for rates. So if a property was brought into the list and it was identified with a valuation date of, for example, 2020, those last couple of years of valuations of rates income will actually come into play in this current year. Obviously, it can't be repaid to the council over the previous years. So that is the bulk of the reason for the positive sum. And there are other variations as properties move in and out of the rating system, and as some properties move in terms of potential discounts available if there's vacant ratings, etc., etc. The updated position at 31st of July is that sum has reduced to 300,000. So it's very, very fluid, and it depends on the significant volume of properties in the domestic and non-domestic rating system. The D rating grant, again, is subject to movement, and this D rating grant relates specifically to those properties which are classified by Land and Property Services as industrial type properties. The council benefits from 70% of the funding, those properties achieving a 70% reduction in their rates bill. So at the moment, that sum is a positive £77,845, but that will change and move as we move into the remainder part of the year. So, Chair, subject to any queries, the recommendations are the council approves the management accounts for the period ended 31st of July, also approves the Treasury Management and Potential Indicator Report for the period ended 30th of June, and notes the update from Land and Property Services and from the Department of Communities in relation to actual penny product and D rating grant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Catherine. Have you any questions, members? Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Catherine. It's a couple of brief questions, really, and particularly in relation to Appendix 1, Catherine. In terms of the parks and estates and property, in terms of the spend to date against what had been profiled, there's quite a significant underspend there. So really, it's first question would be clarity on that and where the underspend has come from and whether that's projected to be ironed out over the year or whether we're expecting or forecasting an underspend at year end. And then something similar again for community services, because proportionally again, there's a 23% underspend. There's one area that I think it'll be useful to get a little bit of clarity on, and I had a look through the papers earlier and I couldn't really find it, but perhaps I missed it. But there's a reference to the 70,000 transfer. It's in Appendix 1 as other reserve transfers. It's just clarity on what exactly that is. And then in terms of the subsequent document, there's the reference of the 3.9 million loans that we've currently got. If we could get a little bit of clarity in terms of the terms of those loans, how many loans there are, how long have we got left to go on them. And there's reference, I think, in the later document too, about £230,000 interest. It would be useful to get clarity on if that's the interest we're expecting to pay for the entirety of this year. It's just really in terms of, so the question is, effectively, what interest rates do we pay and what does that look like in cash terms? Okay. And then finally, Chair, just very quickly, there was a meeting, I can't recall what meeting it was, but maybe perhaps 2 or 3 months ago, fairly early on into this new mandate, there'd been reference about the council was expecting perhaps a rebate or an additional sum of money from HMRC in terms of there'd been an incorrect, issue over VAT, and I think it was leisure facilities, just in terms of clarity on that, where we are on that and to what sum.
I might take that maybe that latter point maybe under stage part 2 of the meeting, maybe Councillor Robbins.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but Catherine, are you happy enough to take them a couple of points from Councillor Robbins?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for the queries. So the first one then in relation to parks, estates and properties. So yes, this is typical of where, let's say, outside factors affect actual activity. So in relation to the £260,000 of underspend at this point in time, 90,000 of that is actually due to the non-domestic revaluation. So there are a number of council estates and properties that were part of that NI reval. So whilst we were undertaking the estimates for 23-24, the outcome of that reval wasn't known. So officers included estimates of rates based on previous year's rates. So the reval brought back, reduced valuations for those particular properties, which has resulted in £90,000. So that is a benefit to this council for this current year. So in very simple terms, we have overestimated rates, bills for those particular properties when we were setting their estimates for 23-24 due to the reval. Another real positive in relation to that, and I do like to talk about the positives, electricity underspend at this point in time. Now, we haven't hit the hard months, and we are like no other like every other organisation, volatile in relation to prices and changes. But there was a change in supplier, and there has been some drop in usage, not significant, but some drop in usage and drop in price. And again, electricity was one of those costs at the time of the estimation that was highlighted to members. We had no idea really what that was. So you look at past years, and we added on maybe 5%. So that has come in positive, and that has been at this point in time 90,000 also of that 226,000. And the over and above that, the off-street car park income has recovered really well over the past couple of years, and £50,000 of that 226,000 relates to income received in those first 4 months over and above the estimate that was included in 22-23 based on the actual. So the car parks have definitely come back, if not to pre-pandemic levels, to almost that. There are a significant number of individual budget lines within those, but they are the key main areas there in relation to properties, estates and parks. There are some overspends. There are overspends in relation to grass cutting. There was a pullback on that budget agreed at the estimates process. And then there were items, for example, within the Gortin Glens Park, where there was an estimation of income, potential generation of income within the Gortin Glens itself, particularly around charging for access, and that hasn't taken place. So they're the key areas in the properties, estates and parks. In relation to community services, bear with me just to pull up that. Yes, so the council did benefit. On one side, we are seeing a significant reduction from central government for grant income. There was additional income provided into that service area for grants. And one other element that has, I suppose, transpired since the point of the last year's financial statements and into this year, there was almost £30,000 of grant offered to community groups that hadn't and haven't been able to deliver on that. So that was shown as a cost last year, and through various different reasons, those community groups haven't been able to spend that grant that was offered. So that is a positive sum coming in for this year. And within that service area, there has been a number of changes in posts, different types of secondments, vacancies from when one post leaves to the other post, or that post is filled again. And that has been the other element of the underspend in those particular areas. So as those posts filled, the underspend will come down in those areas. The reserve transfers quite correctly, and I may possibly add more detail in future months in relation to that. So members will note the election costs which are being brought in through the accounts at this point in time, and the other cost of those reserves. So at this point in time, the costs are attributable to the elections, which isn't a finalised cost, is £290,000. There is an election reserve to cover the full cost of the elections. So that is funds that is taken from the reserve, so it's not affecting the day-to-day running operations of the council in 23-24. And the other element of that reserve transfer is £220,000, which relates to investment income that has been received. That is sitting in the heading called finance, so it's within that 279,000. So that investment income under the code of practice and our regulations is transferred to our reserve. So it'll add to our capital fund reserve, it'll add to our repairs and renewals fund reserve, and it's not allowed as a deduction or to supplement the day-to-day running activities of the council. So that's those. In relation to the loans, members, the balance is as you quoted, 3.9, there are a significant number of smaller loans in that, and if members want, that information can be provided to you. There are various, off the top of my head, the loans may range from about 3 to 11, 12%, depending on when they were taken out, the duration they're taken out for, and they're all loans prior to the inception of Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. But that loan schedule can most definitely be provided to members on Minipad, and I can do that. And in terms of the report, the query on the loan interest, so they are fixed term loans. So we know absolutely in advance when that loan is taken out, the actual capital and interest repayments on those loans. And they're paid twice yearly to the Department of Finance Government Loan Funds.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Councillor Irvine, Robert.
Thanks very much, Chair Stephen. Catherine, I suppose it'll go to you and probably Jill as well. I know these accounts really are 31st July, which is only 4 months into the year. I was wondering when we're going to scrutinise the 6 monthly ones, which would be 30th of September, will they be presented in October or November? That's the first question.
November.
What I was going to ask really was, because of the timing issues with regard to budget lines within certain lines here, I understand we should be past that, particularly because we'll be over the summer going into the autumn. So activity should be more defined. And with actually looking at then activity level, what we're doing within those, would there, it's not a possibility, I would like some sort of brief report coming back in November then to the committee as to whether any of the budgets can be redesigned, basically, be that upward or downward, to give us a more accurate position going forward then on a monthly basis. And if it is downward, I am presuming that under the current policy we would have, that any sort of identified surpluses will transfer into reserves rather than go under veerment. If you're going to actually, if there's an increase and you're looking for a veerment, I would like to see that before we actually do anything and have the discussion if you're finding some of the budgets are under pressure. And I notice basically, and I don't have to say it, waste management. There is an issue in waste management in regard to pick up and drop off. And I know in certain areas and districts throughout our area, there are problems coming in from constituents about part of the bin runs not being collected. I understand there's an issue within that, and Thelma probably will pick it up, in regard to the contracts currently sitting with their employees. I would like a wee bit more visibility on that, and if that has to go into confidential, obviously not now, but at the next committee or in the November when we're actually looking at budgets and whether we have to redesign them or not, I'd like to see that, because I'd like an update, because that's having a direct impact on a variety of our constituents. And it's not in one particular area, it's throughout the district basically. And we are starting to get a lot of complaints, so we need to get on top of it. So that's it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mahan. Sorry, Jill, do you want to come in there at all? Or? Sorry.
Just to say, yes, those queries are fine, and certainly we'll bring back a more detailed report in November in terms of the position. That's a good suggestion, and we can look at that, no problem.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Thank you, Chair. And again, my questions in relation to the interest as well, but on the other side, on the investments that the council has, 26 million there, with an average interest rate from 0.7 to 5%. Just wondering how where we are with the 0.7, how it's so low. Is that a current account interest or where that's coming from? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, member. So yes, absolutely. That's with our Bank of Ireland, who is our incumbent bank for our day-to-day transactions. So what we try to do is max any investment that we can get. So that would be on a call, overnight call account, where we would, as officers, on a twice weekly at least, double check what's needed in our current bank account for day-to-day activities and invest the remainder. We actually had a meeting with the bank this morning, and we've asked them to consider and review that particular rate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roof.
Thanks, Chair. Two quick questions. The first one is just on the estimate of the rates for the council buildings, and we had got a rebate on that for this financial year. Was that estimate just for this year, or would we be owed rebates from previous years on that?
Thank you, Chair. So that is effective from the 1st of April 2023, so just for this current year, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay,
And secondly, just another question again about the interest rates. But you mentioned that they were fixed loans. Is that essentially saying the contract prevents us from early payback on any of those? Yes.
Yes, there is a significant redemption penalty to pay back early. A couple of years ago, we were able to pay back one or two of the older loans, but it actually nearly balanced itself out. So they're fixed for the purposes of security of funds that are being payable or out to the organisation or outside the organisation. But that does come with the penalty of the redemption clauses if one were to settle early. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
okay, members, thanks for that. Can we get a proposer and seconder then? So for the two recommendations here, please. Councillor Irvine and Councillor Mahan. We're all agreed. Okay, thank you, members. And that takes us on to the statement of accounts. That's paper C. And Catherine, you'll take us to that again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So really, members, that this report is a recap on the statement of accounts and to provide some update as to where we are in relation to the finalisation of the audit of the accounts for the 31st of March, and to seek approval then, following discussion of the paper, for the Chair of the Policy and Resources Committee to sign the statement of accounts once the audit is complete and once the recertification process has been undertaken by Alison as the Chief Financial Officer of the Council. So members, as I've said, the draft position for the year end 31st of March was presented to this committee on the 14th of June, and an update to that position was also presented to the Policy and Resources Committee on the 6th of July. I've noted again the key regulations behind the statement of accounts, the report on the accounts themselves, members, and the accounts, the full set of accounts, members, is on decision time for themselves, and that was uploaded following the July meeting. So it's there for any scrutiny or review, and more than willing to take any questions either now or after tonight's meeting on that. The accounts also includes the annual governance statement, which was approved by the committee on the 14th of June. And in line with the regulations, that annual governance statement hasn't changed, was signed and will be included in the final set of accounts. The position in relation to where the current status is, so the audit is almost complete. The full set of accounts was provided in full detail to the audit panel at its meeting yesterday morning. So we give a very, very detailed and comprehensive overview of the state of affairs. Attached to Appendix 1, members, are what we call the key financial statements. So terminology changes slightly depending on what organisation is presenting. For the purposes of local government, it's an income and expenditure statement with the word comprehensive written in front of it, and it is comprehensive. It also includes the movement of reserves statement. So that movement of reserves is also on the bottom of the balance sheet. So the balance sheet is what the council owes and what the council owns. And then a cash flow statement, which really just transfers the opening balance of cash, different types of activities and spend, and then closing balance of cash at the end of the year. And then the accounts themselves are supported by a number of detailed notes, and you will see reference numbers 1, 2, 3, 19, etc. on those key statements, and they are the reference to the detailed notes. So in relation to the actual position, members, that is detailed on section 2.2.3. The accounts themselves in their very detail compares, one, the actual position at the 31st of March compared to the budget for the year, and secondly, and the main element of the accounts, compares the position for this year compared to last year. But the position that it compares for this year to last year includes cash and non-cash entries. And those members who are familiar with particularly fixed asset and capital accounting, where we depreciate an asset, that depreciation is charged as a non-cash expense, but it's not an expense of the council. Where assets are revalued, and our assets are revalued every year for the purposes of financial accounting, those revaluations don't be realised until an actual property is sold. So there's a revaluation other side on their reserves, and they are the unusable reserves, and those by their very nature. So in summary, members, the net income expenditure for the year was £38,748,259. There were approved transfers to and from reserves of £3.127 million. They were detailed individually on both of those meetings in June and July. There was the use of the COVID contingency reserve following a grateful update from the Department for Communities on the use of the funding they provided for the loss of income of 2.562 million, and the charge for the repayment of previous loans of 1.175 million, and the loan interest in the year amounted to 231,000. Direct revenue financing, so that's an element of financing of some capital spend of 1 million. So the net expenditure to be funded was £41,825,588. Central government support amounted to 3.274 million. Rates income amounted to 38.837 million of income, leaving a surplus for the year, which is an increase in the Council's general fund of just over £286,000. In terms of the balance sheet, members, the net worth of the Council at the 31st of March is £173,847,888, made up of long-term assets of 156 million, current assets of 37 million, current liabilities of 12 million, and long-term liabilities of 7 million. The Council's reserve position, members, the usable reserves of the Council have reduced from the prior year from 31.3 million to 23.1 million, as detailed in section 2.7, and that is mainly due to the use of those reserves for capital investment in the district, and the use of that COVID reserve that I've mentioned to support the day-to-day running operations of the councils. In terms of the net worth for the Council, this has increased by 40.6 million, which sounds fantastic, but a significant element of that, or 42 million of that, relates to the movement in the pension liability reserve. So that is where the significant element of the Council's pension, the Nilgos pension scheme, is looked after by Nilgos themselves, and individual councils must bring the costs and the assets and liabilities of that pension scheme onto the Council's balance sheet, and then also takes it back off again. So that shows the movement from the pension scheme. It's an actuarial valuation at each year and point in time, and it has gone into an increased liability over the last 3 or 4 years. And due to changes in rates and assumptions, inflation, CPI, etc., that has changed that pension liability it's actually from a liability to an asset. As I've mentioned, the annual governance statement, members, is as that was approved by the committee here on the 14th of June, and that was also subject to review by the audit panel. So great to be at this point. We have received a draft report from the Audit Office, and pleased to note that there are 3 priority 3 recommendations on the accounts and no requests to change any figures. So there are no significant material misstatements within the statement of accounts. So glad to be at that position, and we wait for the audit certificate as we approach the 30th of September. Members, very much linked to the financial statements then is the Treasury Management and Potential Indicator Report for the 31st of March. It's in the same setup, format and style as that was presented in the previous paper, members, but if there's any queries on those. And again, at this point, or for the year end 31st of March, there were absolutely no issues in relation to the indicators set by this Council and the actual realisation of those indicators at the 31st of March. So, subject to any queries, Chair, that the Council approves the Statement of Accounts for the year end 31st of March 23, subject to any amendments following the conclusion of the audit, and that approval is given to the Chair of the Committee, Councillor McCann, to sign the final audited Statement of Accounts on or before the 30th of September. And I know we have dates and diaries, and hopefully those dates will be realised, and that the Council approves the Treasury Management and Potential Indicator Report for the same year end. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a million, Catherine, and thanks to your team for all that work, and well done. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to formally thank Catherine and her team as Chair of the Audit Panel to say that the report was comprehensive yesterday is almost an understatement. It went into every detail possible, and I am happy to propose the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green. Have we a seconder? Councillor Mahan. Thank you, folks. Are we all agreed? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Catherine. So that takes us on to 4.4, and that's our monthly report on procurement and tenders, members. It really is before us just for approval, unless there's any questions. No, if not, I'll take a proposer and seconder, Councillor McPhillips and Councillor Irving. All agreed? Yeah. Okay, and I'll just hand over to Jill again here to take us through paper E, and that's her report. Jill.
Thank you, Chair. There's just a few smaller matters. So the first two are for approval in terms of payment of invoices received for membership of the National Association of Councillors, and also for some training that was carried out from NILGA for elected members in terms of induction. And then we have two items for noting. One is the annual report for equality and good relations in the council, and it provides an update on the duty of the council to consider equality in all aspects of the organisation across everything we do in terms of planning and delivering our service, in terms of developing all the policies we have, and in terms of employment of staff. And in the report, there is an update on the most recent Equality Action Plan and also the Disability Action Plan, which were very recently developed and approved through PNR. So really, effectively with that report, there are no significant outstanding issues with regard to progress in that area, and all actions have either been achieved, partially achieved, or will continue into the next reporting period. The second report for noting is the annual report for registration services. So as members will be aware, the registration team is responsible for registering all births, marriages, deaths, and civil partnerships across the district. And additionally, the registration team performs ceremonies, performs civil marriages and partnership, both within council premises and also at approved venues. So the report provides a data update in terms of progress and highlights a few of the legislative changes that have come into play during the last year. Also including in that report is some very minor updates to the policy for scheduling of civil marriages and partnerships ceremonies, and it's just really in terms of clarification around scheduling of these, and there's a bit more detail on that.
Okay.
So yes, so in terms of recommendations, so firstly that the council approves payment of the annual membership fee for the National Association of Councillors, and also allows future annual payments to be made in line with delegated authority for this mandate. The second recommendation is approves payment of fees to NILGA for delivery of elected member induction. And thirdly, that the council notes both the Equality and Good Relations annual report and the Registration Services annual report with the clarification of updates to the policy.
Okay, thank you, Jill. And Councillor Coyle, Debbie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to propose the recommendations. But can I just ask on the equality report on page 11 around the diversity champion? Our diversity champion is Councillor Nolene Hayes, and I recently represented Council at the launch of the Ukrainian consultation report that Nolene kind of found out about afterwards. And she, as diversity champion, she's not really aware of all the stuff that is going on in council. And I'm just wondering if I could suggest maybe that somebody from Good Relations kind of has contact with Nolene as our diversity champion, so that she can attend, you know, some of these events as and when she can. And I propose the recommendations as well.
Okay, go ahead, Jill.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work goes on in terms of quality and good relations within the councils and with the very many community groups that are out there. And it's very welcomed that we would engage more with elected members and particularly with our champion in that area, whatever. So certainly I'll take that forward and facilitate that contact.
Thank you. Councillor Robbins.
Thanks, Chair. And Jill, it's just a quick query in relation to that reference to NILGA and the £1,100 plus VAT for the induction programme. I mean, I would have just assumed that would have came as part and package of whatever arrangement we have with NILGA. So the query would be, is that normal for NILGA to invoice the council for events such as that? And then the second query would be, I see we pay the figures there for what we pay to the National Association of Councillors. What do we pay to NILGA on an annual basis?
Maybe if Alison's online, maybe Chief Executive, if you're here.
Certainly, Chair, yeah, happy to respond. In terms of the regional programme, it was something that I believe we reported through in June. of this year to the committee. So this is a new initiative that NILGA have undertaken, and it was an additional service and over and above the normal membership subscription. My recollection, Chair, is that our payment to NILGA is possibly in the region of about £50,000 per annum. Catherine may be able to draw down the figure for it, but it's in and around that and linked to population.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Catherine?
Yeah, I can confirm that that is 49,936, so not too far away from 50. Yep.
Okay, have you got a seconder for that recommendations, please, as per the report? Councillor Bruff. Elaine, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Deehan, go ahead. I didn't see your hand there.
No, I was just coming in to second, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Josephine. Okay, members, and we're all agreed? Yeah. Okay, so moving on to correspondence then. So, and if I can just ask the Chief Executive maybe to take us through these here, Alison.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Thanks, members. The first item is from the Department for Communities. This is regarding the Affordable Warmth Scheme. Obviously, Chair, the Council had raised concerns about the removal of targeting. I know there is an update item also in confidential staffing matters, but in summary, the Department is saying it was a regrettable and a difficult decision. It's not something they're going to revisit, and the scheme is now delivered by the Housing Executive, but targeting is not part of that.
Okay, so this is just for noting then. So if I just give a proposal and second of note, please. Councillor Coyle and Councillor McPhillips. And then second piece there is from, so second two pieces is from NILGA.
Chair, so the first item from NILGA is dated the 14th of August, and this is seeking an elected member to participate on the Strategic Policy Network, the terms of reference of which are attached. In terms of the nomination this evening, Chair, while it would be ratified at the Council meeting, NILGA do hope to convene the initial meeting of this group before the end of September, albeit a date hasn't been confirmed as yet. So we would be seeking a nomination to the group, please.
Okay. I do note, I see comments on the floor. I do note that Councillor Michael Duff would have an interest in this particular piece of work. So is there any other nominations, or if I get a proposal and seconder for Councillor Michael Duff or anybody else? Thomas proposed and seconder. Councillor Brown. So that's Barry, obviously subject to himself being available on the dates there as well. He's just not here tonight.
That's great. Thank you, Chair. And then the second item is the regional programme for elected member development. So this is the long-term programme essentially that NILGA do, and that has accreditation attached, and some of our members have participated in the past. So the full detail is outlined, Chair, and I'd maybe just highlight to members the detail of the costs. It's somewhat predicated on the final number of participation, but working on the basis of 20 members. You're looking at total cost of £1,215 per person. And then in terms of the planning leadership programme, and that's targeted primarily for those on planning committees, it is £622 per member participant, and that's based on 30 participants.
Okay, and that's for noting, Alison.
Well, Chair, there may well be members who would wish to participate in the programme. We have had members normally over the years who have availed of this.
Okay. Maybe is it appropriate maybe to seek expressions of interest maybe via email, or does this have to be done tonight, Alison?
No, there's no particular urgency on it, Chair, albeit the 20th of October would be the first module, and then for the wider programme, and then the planning one is the 17th of November. So certainly perhaps we could even take nominations at the council meeting and give members more of an opportunity to consider. And I'm conscious, Chair, so Councillor Deehan is indicating as well.
Apologies. Go ahead, Councillor Deehan.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Well, I just wanted to say, well, first of all, I'll propose to note the correspondence from NILGA, and just to say that I have previously completed both training programs, and I would encourage members to consider this, even though it probably does work out quite expensive for the council, but they are truly wonderful learning opportunities, and particularly for the newly elected councillors, I can recommend them very highly. Chair. But I won't be repeating the modules, but I have to say I did enjoy them very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Irvine?
Thanks very much, Stephen. Might I suggest that we table the planning module at the planning committee meeting next week, and we can discuss that in more depth then.
Yeah.
And that's prior to the council. So anything that comes out of the planning committee can be sent forward to council for ratification.
Yeah, happy with that for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're happy with that, Alison. Alison,
Chair,
just
so
maybe-
we'll do that, Chair, then. So if I think Councillor Irvine will be second, the noting we'll include on the planning agenda, and then we can take other nominations at the council meeting in October.
Happy with that. Okay, and you're happy,
Thank you.
Councillor Irvine, and we're all agreed. Okay, so that takes us through to the, there's another piece there from Alison, or sorry,
Yeah,
from
from
Liz
Nilga,
as
we
well,
can
if we
take that now,
now.
Chair. Yeah, this just came in and it's for the audit, specifically for audit panel members, Chair. And it's on Friday, the 6th of October from 12:30 to 2 p.m, either virtual or in person. Now, while it is focused predominantly at audit members, I do know that Nilga would welcome others, but certainly, Chair, we would commend it to our members on our audit panel, subject to their availability, and would suggest approval accordingly.
Okay. Maybe get a proposer and seconder for that, please. Councillor Irvine and Councillor Coyle. And we're all agreed. Okay, and that takes us back then to 5.3, Alison, the correspondence from the Trust in relation to a CFO.
Yes, Chair, we've been asked just to seek an update specifically following the informal meeting with the Cuban Embassy and the potential for doctors from the Henry Reid Foundation. And really the position as set out in the letter is what was reflected by the Trust representatives at the informal meeting as well.
Okay, and can I give a proposer and seconder to note that, please? Councillor O'Reilly? And Councillor Roof. Thank you, and we're all agreed. Okay, and there's a few other pieces, is there, Alison, under other?
Yes, we just have two left, Chair. So the first is from the Department for Infrastructure, and this relates something obviously has had a lot of coverage, the parking places, loading bays, waiting restrictions and urban clearways in Enniskillen. This is consistent with the proposals throughout the public realm scheme, and really this is the last stage of the legislative provision as far as we understand. Closing date of the 29th of September. We'd be recommending, Chair, just that it's noted, but again, maybe we would just suggest to the department to do everything they can to expedite this process. It's very long overdue.
Okay, maybe get a proposer and seconder for that. Councillor Roof and Councillor Brown. And we're all agreed? Want to come in that, Dermot? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Happy to second that, to note that. Glad to see this bit of legislation progress, because there was a lot of frustration, particularly from businesses on the main street in Enniskillen over parking over the last while. And yeah, they'll be glad to see this progress. Just a word of caution that whenever the legislation does come in, that there should be a bit of a lead in so that the members of the public know and they're not caught short with parking fines. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Dermot. Okay, and there's one more piece, Alison, from the Electoral Commission.
Sorry, Chair, I had my hand up there.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, Victor. Go ahead.
We're just obviously, as a lot of you will realise, it's something that I've been quite vocal on over a long period of time. So with the abuse, certainly very much of the disabled blue badge spaces. So certainly nice to see this moving forward, albeit still a wee way to go, but hopefully it will happen sooner rather than later. Just want to say that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor, and apologies for that. Okay, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So then the final item of correspondence is the third item in other, and it's the report on the local elections, Chair. And it was just received today. And I know there has been some media commentary, and it might be something the council would wish to follow up on, specifically the concern about the large number of rejected postal and proxy applications, which really related to the digital registration number. So that I appreciate there's quite a lot of detail in the report, Chair. Members may wish to have some time to reflect on it. And the only other comment I was going to make on this, Chair, is we do now have a new Chief Electoral Officer. And obviously the council has in the past met with the Chief Electoral Officer and had a good relationship. So it may be appropriate to invite the new Chief Electoral Officer to engage with members in due course.
Okay, Councillor Debbie Coyle.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd actually want to propose that what Alison just said there, that we do invite the electoral officer down here. And I just think I read this a little while ago, and I think it's actually shocking that over 3,500 people actually were denied their right to vote because they didn't have a DRN. And I know from constituents coming in and asking, you know, us to help phone up and look for these numbers, that not everybody, this doesn't apply just to people who registered online. Some older people who were applying for postal and proxies, maybe the husband was okay, and then his wife was turned down because she didn't have her DRN, and they would have both applied, registered on paper, you know, a couple of years before. So I'm not sure if it's just for people who apply online. And I think one of the schools here, I was contacted by a wheelchair user who asked me to go around and take photos of the kind of temporary ramps that were put there for them to be able to get up and go into the school and vote. Just wasn't really suitable. And the other thing was that isn't kind of mentioned in that, well, it might be mentioned at the end actually, is that some of the workers at the polling station actually couldn't vote. They were sent away. They got their voting paper when they got to the polling station that they was working in, but it was too far away from their home place where they had to vote, and because they were sent further away, so they didn't get their vote either. So we'd definitely look forward to.
So we'll probably bring this back to council, full council, and then ultimately
Absolutely,
reach
yeah.
to the new Chief Electoral
Yeah.
Officer as well. Councillor Roof.
Mr. Chair, just to echo what Councillor Coyle has said there, you know, I had multiple people who contacted me expecting a postal vote and didn't receive it. And of note, when I tried to sort it initially, there was a couple of attempts where the actual team at the electoral office weren't clear on the fact that there was a DRN number needed for those particular voters. And then by the time that we bounced back to try and get this sorted, it was too late then to get the postal vote out. So I thought there was really poor communication from them at the start of that. DRN number is probably great for the electoral office, really easy for them to use and things. It's not easy for elderly voters, for voters who struggle with online usage. And there should be some form of workaround built in for voters who have potentially lost it, or that they just can't remember actually ever getting it.
Yeah.
So that would be definitely something we should be monitoring and
Absolutely.
pushing back to.
There's a few members looking to speak on this. We will take this back to the full council meeting, and we'll be meeting the Chief Electoral Officer. Just maybe keep the comments maybe brief as possible at this stage, and we can go through maybe at the full council meeting if we're happy. Go ahead, Councillor Irving.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep it very brief. If we get a date arranged, I would ask Alison that she tags in all the councillors so we can actually put in written queries or questions, so that a list can be compiled and actually presented to the Chief Electoral Officer prior to them coming down, so at least they have a set of questions, and then other questions can transpire on the day at the meeting.
Hopefully some answers as well with them or her. Okay, Councillor Brown. Sorry, apologies. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to agree with what's been said, during the election, I assisted quite a number of people getting postal and proxy votes. Nearly every single person needed a DRN, and the vast majority did not know what it was, had no idea, and had extreme difficulty finding out what it was. And then as a subsequent lost their votes. So yeah, an extremely undemocratic process, and glad to see that we're going to hopefully change that. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dermot. Councillor O'Reilly.
Yes, Chair, thank you. It'll be interesting to see what we do change. My experience lately of the electoral office under certainly the previous administration has been dismal, and dismal failure upon dismal failure. We take, for example, the loss of the electoral office out of Omagh and the localised service that was provided there, and we should be calling for that to be returned, because certainly the intervening years of experience have been very negative in the centralisation in Belfast of that service. I suppose highlighting that point, Chair, would be that this council had asked the previous chief electoral officer why in County Down there was terminals to be able to put into sports facilities to allow you to be able to register and so forth, and that this council was disadvantaged after losing the local office that this wasn't put in here. We asked and continued to ask, and my understanding, unless Alison can update us, is that we have had no update as to what the rationale for that was, and we did call to have those put into both the Fermanagh and Omagh area of our council district, with little response from the electoral office. So I just want to make that call again, you know, those two calls, and to have that on record for when we would meet the chief electoral officer.
Okay, I'll give Councillor Deehan and Councillor Warrington maybe the last word to Alison if she wants to speak. Just note the end of it there. Councillor Deehan.
All right, thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, first of all, I want to welcome this report. It's good to have that report. And what would be even better would be if the difficulties and concerns highlighted in the report can be addressed in a constructive manner. The right to cast one's vote is fundamental to our democracy. And given the fact that, sadly, many, up to 50% of our population choose not to exercise their right to vote, I think it's disgraceful that for those people who do want to exercise their right to vote, that they are hampered in this way. I think it is essential that we get the new Chief Electoral Officer down to answer our queries. And finally, I want to say the issue about allowable expenses. This is not living in the real world. The allowable expenses limit is totally inadequate to realistically fight an election, particularly for independent candidates. With political parties, there are economies of scale, but for independent candidates running for election, it's almost impossible to make any meaningful impact in terms of the election expenses. So I do hope that those can be reviewed, and that would be a question that I certainly would be asking the Chief Electoral Officer. So I look forward to that meeting, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And finally, Councillor Warrington.
Yeah, well, I'll be very brief. Welcome a meeting with the Chief Electoral Officer, and hope that she's more accommodating than her predecessor. Let's be honest with you, the DRN numbers in the last election, I think I actually dreamt about them every night for about probably about 3 weeks. They were an absolute nightmare, and it caused a lot of people to miss out on their votes, and certainly there was a lot of problems caused with older people who hadn't a clue even what the DRN number was, and by the time we got them sorted to realise what they were, it was too late. Then the threshold came and went. So I certainly welcome a meeting with the Chief Electoral Officer. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Victor. And Alison, do you want to add anything to that discussion?
So, other than Chair, I think maybe to clarify, it's a he rather than a she, the Chief Electoral Officer. But the second point, maybe just in terms of Councillor Deehan's comments, specifically regarding the allowances, and indeed it's something that we've made representations for, just the really the very poor financial return in terms of running the election as well. Those would be matters for the Northern Ireland Office, Chair. So they would be outside of the scope of the electoral office here. So if we were going to make representations on those matters, I'd suggest that we could certainly include it as an action here, but we just would need to the NIO as opposed to the electoral office.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Is this seconder for your proposal? Has it picked up that Councillor O'Reilly's, sorry, Councillor Coyle's proposal? Second it? Yeah, and that's seconded by Councillor Brown. Okay, so we all happy with that, members? Councillor Dean, if you just maybe take down your hand there, please. So that takes us on to any other urgent and relevant business. I have one piece which we'll take in part 2. So moving into part 2, please, if I can just take a proposer and seconder to go into confidential, please. Councillor Mahan and Councillor Irving. Just bear with us a few seconds to get the recording stopped. Okay, thank you, Donal. Okay, so can I just ask the Chief Executive to provide a wee summary of part 2 business, please, if possible?
Thank you, Chair. Just while in confidential business, the committee considered the confidential report on staff matters and also received an update on current legal cases and advices, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And can we get a proposer and seconder for that report, please? Councillor McPhillips and Councillor Irvine. And we're all agreed? Yeah. Okay, members, that takes us to the end of the meeting. Just thank you for your attendance and wish you all a safe journey home. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.